is versatile in what it can do. It doesn't do anything great, but it does do a lot of things well. And we're going to see exactly if Art can keep doing those things well, especially game one. This is one of the matchups where, we've seen Jund a lot on camera, and it's been playing against a lot of aggro decks where it doesn't actually want to draw Rakdos Return game one.
Yeah.
This is the reverse of that, where, the Jund decks are typically playing 2 copies of Rakdos Return. And this is one of the times where you're going to want to draw one, because it can turn the game 1 percentage around quite a bit instead of drawing all those removal spells before he has the opportunity to kind of side out some of those poor removal spells and side into a more cohesive package of card drawing, discard, and just really good threats. So we'll see if Art can kind of steal game one, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and before the tournament, I thought red-white flash was the best deck. But, it really is going to come down to your Jund matchup, because I think your matchup against the rest of the field is actually pretty solid.
Sure.
But again, Jund has cards like Huntmaster and Thraktus, which can be very annoying for the blue-red-white flash deck to contend with. So we'll see what happens here. If Devyn's able to win this game, I think he's got a good shot of winning the whole thing, or win this match rather.
So from Devyn, we're going to see a turn 1 Hallowed Fountain, and he's going to cast a Thought Scour. He turned over a Snapcaster Mage and I believe a Restoration Angel, while Art just came out with a Stomping Grounds tapped and saying go. So Devyn's going to increase the velocity of his deck right away.
And it doesn't look like he has an Augur Bolus here, but it looks like I think he has Azorius Charm, which you can cycle. He's got a Sphinx of Revelation. Thankfully, though, Art's draw doesn't have the Farseek, which we've seen him cast multiple times.
The first?
So it's the first time. Yeah,
that means you're starting off the morning pretty well.
So that's pretty good for Devyn. I mean, he definitely doesn't want to see a turn 2 Farseek from Art. Certainly makes his next few turns a little easier. And it doesn't. Not sure if he has a Boros Reckoner here either. It looks like he just has a bunch of land, a couple of cyclers. He has a Sphinx of Revelation. So
a little more of a reactive hand here.
Yeah, but again, I mean, he has Sphinx of Revelation, which is huge, and he's got plenty of mana. So it doesn't. And again, Art doesn't have many 3-drops in his deck. Without the Farseek, his deck sort of becomes a little awkward. He's got a Liana there.
Oh, one of the better 3-drops he can actually start off with here. You do see Devyn's hand does have a couple copies of Azorius Charm, a couple of lands, and that Sphinx of Revelation that you mentioned. So, oddly enough, it looks like that this is going to be pretty good here. As you're going to see Devyn cycle an Azorius Charm, draw into a Searing Spear.
Yeah, the only issue with Liliana right here is that Devyn has a lot more card drawing than Art does.
Yeah.
And Art has no. Art actually has no card drawing, and he has no threat in play right now. So Devyn might be fine with just discarding a few cards for a turn, as long as he's able to resolve the Sphinx of Revelation on turn 5 or 6, which it looks like he's going to be able to do. Yeah, certainly not a terrible card for Art here. It's certainly going to help control Devyn's progress a little bit. But it's not a game breaker.
We see Devyn discard a Steam Vents to the Liliana. Art discarded a Forest. Devyn does just play a Steam Vents of his own and does pass the turn back, his hand containing another Azorius Charm. That's Sphinx of Revelation, a Searing Spear, and a couple of lands. Art does have a Castle Wolfram and Stomping Grounds. Looks like he just drew a Farseek for the turn, too, so you can see that in the middle of his hand. And he is going to tick Liliana up to 5 to start the turn. I think we have a tragic slip in his hand over there as well.
Yeah, and both players discard face down, not wanting to give any information. And again, not the best situation for Devyn, but not, really that. He still has the Sphinx of Revelation, so he has a way to draw out of it next turn a little bit. It would have been great if he had Restoration Angel right here, but he at least has a Searing Spear to deal with the Huntmaster. And again, he can cast Sphinx of Revelation for 2 next turn if he chooses, or if he feels like there's not enough pressure on the board, he can just wait a turn and try to do it for 3.
And you do see Searing Spear take out that Huntmaster of the Fells. Art does get his 2 life and his Wolf token. Devyn's going to draw for his turn and finds a Think Twice. And we do see the Sulphur Falls come into play here. So he can Sphinx of Revelation for 2. He also can cast and flashback Think Twice for the turn. Kind of mitigate some of the work that Liliana's doing here. He can also simply discard Think Twice.
Yeah, I can see him discarding the Think Twice and then flashing it back. Again, we're getting to the point where he needs to deal with Liliana now.
Yeah.
But, hopefully he can draw a Restoration Angel or like a Searing Spear to maybe slow it down a little bit. Because ideally, he can still draw more cards than Art, So Art can get to the point where he has no cards left in his hand. So Devyn is not going to be too concerned with dealing with the Liliana until at least shrinking it a little bit before it can go ultimate.
Sure. Now we're going to see Art reach for that Liliana again. It's like considering ticking it up, or does he want to cast the Farseek first? Maybe cast the Farseek to try to bait out a counter spell so that Devyn has less cards in his hand.
Yeah, I think we get to the point where Art just says, you know what, I'm tired of discarding. It doesn't look like it's doing much against Devyn, but I think he just wants to get to the ultimate here.
Yeah, and you do see, Think Twice is going to bite the dust. Tragic Slip leaves for Art. And you do see an Art hand. He has a Vampire Nighthawk, a Farseek, and a Mystery card over there. But you're going to see a Vampire Nighthawk come on down. And the Mystery card is an Arbor Elf.
And yeah, I mean, we're getting to the point where Liliana can go ultimate next turn, so Devyn really needs to draw a Searing Spear here or something effective.
Yeah, Snapcaster Mage will get the job done as well right now. But one thing he just can't do is find a Restoration Angel, as he's going to flashback Think Twice and draw himself a card. Finds Boros Reckoner. So that's a step in the right direction. Looks like we might see a Cycle of Azorius Charm as well here. As you can see, I think he's coming to the conclusion that he's under a little bit more pressure than he would like to. Now he's being attacked. His life total and his permanents are being attacked because of Liliana.
Okay, so he managed to draw land anyway. He really needs a 6 land there, because the thing is, even if Liliana does go ultimate here, it's not the worst. It's not great, but it's not the worst thing in the world, because he basically, I think he's left with 3 lands, but he can cast Sphinx of Revelation for 3, but get some life. Art doesn't have like a devastating board presence. He basically has 5 power on board, but Devyn's gonna be gaining 3 here, and he doesn't need that many lands to function. If he could just, once he gets the 4th land, he can start casting Restoration. He can cast all the creatures in his deck. Yeah. So again, not too devastating, not great, but Devyn's certainly still in this game.
And one of the draws that you do see from Devyn off that Sphinx of Revelation is a Hallowed Fountain.
Yes,
so you see an Azorius Charm as well, and I think that's either a Sphinx of Revelation or Supreme Verdict, one of the two that he did draw.
And the Hallowed Fountain's great because Art's likely going to put the red mana in one pile and everything else in another pile. So kind of unfortunate if it is a Supreme Verdict, but it looks like it might be Sphinx of Revelation. Yeah. I'm not sure if does Devyn have Supreme Verdict in the main deck?
Most of these versions of normally play one. It looks like he's actually cut his.
Yeah. So again, Devyn, even though Liliana did go ultimate, not the worst thing. He'll be left with 3 mana. He still has a Hallowed Fountain. Art only has 5 power on the board, but we know that Devyn actually has a Boros Reckoner, which he will be able to cast next turn if he chooses to. And Art doesn't actually have much gas after that. I think he's a Farseek and land, basically. So not the worst situation for Devyn right here.
Yeah, Art's hand right now is a Farseek of Stomping Grounds. Among the lands that he does have in play, one of them is a Keswick Wolf Run. So that one does matter quite a bit, as you do see Devyn sacrifice here to the Liliana. He's going to keep the Clifftop Retreat, the Hallowed Fountain, and the island around. Lets his red sources go. And it looks like Art's going to figure out what he wants to do for the rest of the turn. As you see him sliding his lands around a little bit. Might see that Stomping Ground coming to play untapped, so he can do a Wolf Run activation.
Yeah, I think he wants to cast Farseek here, just to get a little bit more mana out there, make his Keswick Wolf Run even more threatening. So it looks like we're just going to see Art empty his hand this turn. And again, Devyn, despite the fact that Art actually ultimated a Liliana, Devyn's not in the worst shape. He has a Boros Reckoner to deal, theoretically, with both the ground attackers, and he has an Azorius Charm to deal with Nighthawk, which is great, especially if Art tries to go all in with Keswick Wolf on one turn.
Sure. No, so would you have considered maybe moving that Liliana up to 7, making another discard happen, and then possibly trying to get the ultimate and have Liliana stick around? Or do you think just getting the value of Liliana, making Devyn sacrifice 3 lands that turn is good enough?
I actually would have considered taking it up once, because you basically know that Devyn doesn't have a burn spell. He likely has a Sphinx of Revelation, which is going to be bad for you, but still, you can empty your hand this turn and then make him discard a card. So I don't know. It might have been I think it might have been a little bit better to just uptick it, because even if Devyn casts Sphinx of Revelation and then drops a bunch of creatures into play, Liliana's activation is just going to be even more effective. You can put creatures in one pile, lands in another pile. You can start making him sack a creature if you choose to. So it gives Art, I think, a little bit more play if he just chooses to not ultimate it, especially because Art's hand wasn't that powerful afterwards. He basically just had a Farseek in another land. So, but again, I think you can go either way. It just depends on what you read Devyn on.
And so now we are going to see an attack here from Art, the Vampire Nighthawk. Arbor Elf is going to help that Keswick Wolf run out. It's going to be an activation there for 4. 6 total damage coming across the Devyn. It's going to put him down to 6. So he is facing quote-unquote lethal, but we know he has a Azorius Charm hiding in his hand along with an Izzet Charm now. And that Boros Reckoner is doing a nice job of holding the fort off of that Wolf token and that Arbor Elf. So now Devyn just does need to try to stabilize, and he only does have 4 lands, and he does have a temporary answer to the Vampire Nighthawk.
Yeah, and I can't really see what Devyn. Oh, he did draw Thragtusk. So yep. I question whether or not Art will actually go all in this turn, knowing that Devyn has mana up and he has a number of actions. But yeah, decides to just go for the kill right here.
The threat, there's a lot of things that Devyn can threaten there. So going for the kill there is a little bit ambitious, honestly. Between Azorius Charm, Snapcaster Mage on a Searing Spear, there are a lot of different things that can happen.
Oh, Devyn even has the Thought Scour, so yeah, that's pretty good turn.
You see Thought Scour targeting Art. It's going to turn over that Vampire Nighthawk and Olivia Voldaren. It's going to draw Devyn another card. He's going to keep increasing the velocity of his deck. Make sure that he can hit some land drops now as well as you see him draw a Glacial Fortress. And now you're going to see an Augur of Bolas.
So we know that Art still has a Thragtusk. Ooh, I managed to get a Counterflux though.
You also see a Mizium Mortars there as well.
Is there? Oh, really? Oh, so, but with only 1 red source right now, not sure if he has another land in his hand. I think he might, but yeah. So he decides to go to Counterflux. Okay. Ships some Mizium Mortars and Restoration Angel to the bottom of his deck, and yeah, he's pretty far away from the overload cost of Mizium Mortars. So, Devyn's still plugging away. Not in the worst shape here. First strike ability of Boros Reckoner is pretty huge against Keswick Wolf Run. Mm-hmm. And it looks like Devyn's getting a text message about what.
Must be nice to be so cool.
But okay, so Devyn, still trying to stabilize, trying to gain control. He has a Counterflux for a potential Thragtusk here. Has the first strike ability, and he still has a Strings of Revelation, which he can potentially cast for 2, maybe 3 next turn, hopefully.
And you saw Arch draw that turn was a Dragon Skull Summon, so his hand right now is a Thragtusk, a Dragon Skull Summon that he played for his land this turn, and an Arbor Elf. So, as good as his start was, all things considered, with that Liliana on turn 3 ticking up and actually ultimating it, it's pretty humbling feeling to actually lose after ultimating a Liliana. It looks like that's what may happen here.
But I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we saw it. That's why I kind of said Liliana's not that huge, because as long as Devyn plays correctly and doesn't get worried and get too nervous about it, just be patient and just do what your deck does, and I think it's fine. And like Devyn here, Art here doesn't really have a good attack, so I think he should probably just cast Thragtusk, which it looks like he's going to do, which is again great for Devyn because he has the Counterflux. Art is basically out of cards now, and Art knew about the Counterflux, mm-hmm. but rather just try to get it out there, and next turn maybe he's going to try to threaten with a lethal attack with the Keswick Wolf Run, but we know that Devyn actually has an Izzet Charm for whatever he targets, so that's actually going to be the ideal situation for Devyn, because Art will basically go all in. He'll lose 2 creatures to the Reckoner, and he loses the creature that Keswick Wolf runs, and he effectively time walks. Devyn will time walk Art for that turn.
So now we're going to see another Augur of Bolas here from Devyn. We'll see what he finds off of this one. You see a couple of lands and a mystery card. I think it was Restoration Angel. Moves towards the bottom.
I think Devyn is actually, it's probably a good thing that Devyn missed there, because if Devyn hit like a Searing Spear or an Azorius Charm, it's much less likely that Art goes for it next turn. Yeah. And again, Devyn really wants Art to go for it.
Ooh, and now we're getting a little aggressive here. Boros Reckoner coming across with Art at 30 life.
I would not have expected that, because I think Devyn, based on the way Art played the last turn, he knows that Art knew about the Counterflux. So I think it's pretty obvious that Art's plan is to just attack with all 3 creatures and Wolf Run the one you don't block, and hope that that's good enough. And if that is his plan, then you can blow him out with the Reckoner. You can kill all his creatures.
maybe his line of thought is I can just blow him out either way I can walk him into an Izzet charm that he hasn't seen yet. I can walk him into an Azorius charm.
Yeah, I mean it's not. Yeah, it's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, he's still gonna be in a really good position right here because as long as he's doing
hindsight obviously is 50-50, but looking at the attack now, he's led him into just a disaster here. Of those Arbor Elves look like they're gonna die. You're gonna see a huge Kessid Wolfern activation on this wolf, and he's just gonna Azorius charm this or Izzet charm it. He can pick his poison on what he wants to do here. As you see, Devyn's going to take a look at the graveyard, and those Arbor Elves are basically going to bite the dust as he assumed that maybe I could try to get the win with the wolf token. But again, some red lights have to go off in your head, right? If he's attacking with the Boros Reckoner, I probably don't have the green light here to try to kill him.
Well, that was my only concern with the attack, is that you're basically telegraphing that you have something, and Art might be less likely to go for it, but.
He says, I'm going to target the Arbor Elf that is being blocked by an Augur of Bolas.
And this is what I was afraid of, because, I think if Devyn doesn't even cast the second Augur of Bolas and just passes the turn, Art is so much more likely to just attack with everything and go all in on the unblocked creature. And you're just, that way you can guarantee to kill everything. Now, Devyn is basically forced to use a removal spell on an Arbor Elf.
Sure. And
Art is still left with a wolf in play, and he will do 2 damage to Devyn.
Sure.
So I think Devyn's optimal play last turn was probably just not attack with the Wrecker and not even cast the second Augur, because again, you don't want 3 blockers out there, and you also don't want to hit a removal spell because you just give Art too much information and make the correct play.
I'm just really trying to set a huge trap. As you're going to see an Azorius charm here, put that Arbor Elf back on top of the deck, leaving Art with a very poor draw for the turn.
Yeah, and again, it's not the worst thing. I mean, he's taking 2. It's not ideal, but he kills the Arbor Elf, and he's taking away his draw step too. Yeah. So, I believe he might still have the Sphinx's Revelation too. Yeah.
Yep, he does still have Sphinx's Revelation in his hand. Also, that Izzet charm, and draws another Boros Reckoner, and is feeling pretty comfortable with an attack here.
Yeah, he knows Art is just drawing a Boros Arbor Elf for the turn. He can play another Boros Reckoner and leave a red up.
And he is turning the tide here. He needs to be careful how he does tap that mana, yes. Because he does want to have access to both First Strike and Izzet Charm. And he does correct himself, plays a Boros Reckoner, and passes the turn back. We know Art's going to draw an Arbor Elf for the turn to go along with that Wolf token. And he's going to realize that no attacks are good here because of Boros Reckoner's First Strike. Plays an Arbor Elf and does pass the turn. And also, one thing to keep in mind here as well, as you do see Devyn kind of turning the corner, starting to take over the course of this game, is that Art does have 4 copies of Bonfire of the Damned in his deck. Devyn sitting at 4 life, a Miracle Bonfire of the Damned. He can cast through an Izzet Charm, so long as he doesn't hastily tap all of his mana and say in your face. But a Bonfire of the Damned off the top of the deck right now will actually get the job done. So at least 4 cards are very, very good for Art right now. And there are others, of course. He does have Garruk Primal Hunter in his deck, and Olivia Valderin. Thragtusk is pretty good right now as well. But there are 4 game winners out there.
Well, the problem with Bonfire though is that you have to cast it. You can cast it for 4 and play around Izzet Charm, but do you play around Sphinx's Revelation too? So
that's a good question.
Do I do it for 6 to make sure, or do I play around Izzet Charm? If you do it for 6, you still have enough, I think, to play around both cards. Unless if Devyn has a 3rd land though, or rather 6th land, then you can't play around. Okay, so a Bonfire still is probably good right here.
And
no, it doesn't matter if you get it.
It's going to be a sweat these next couple of draw steps if you're Devyn.
Yeah, he. Okay, so Devyn chooses not to cast Sphinx's Revelation for 2. There's another land.
You can even consider playing that one untapped if you'd like to, just so you can Revelate for 4 instead of 3.
Yeah, that might be a reasonable line there. Expose himself a little bit to Searing Spear. So I'm not sure he wants to do that, unless he just says, I'm going to do a main phase.
He does disagree with you, as he does play it untapped and go down to 2.
So if Art draws a Searing Spear here, and he plays it correctly, I think that he could actually just win the game.
What you see is another land drawn here for Art. He is going to play a Blood Crypt and just pass the turn back. And we are going to see a Sphinx Revelation for 4 here from Devyn.
Devyn just says, I know you don't have a Searing Spear. I'm going to go for it.
And Devyn's going to go from 2 up to 6. Going to draw 4 cards. Sacred Foundry among them, and there was also a Snapcaster as well.
Stops the bonfire now, so Devyn looks to be in pretty good shape right now.
Yep. You see a nice exhibit here of playing control, stabilizing, and now turning the corner and being aggressive.
Yeah.
Now he's trying to get the game over with. He's drawing his cards. He's got a little bit of life back here. He can play some defense with the Augur Volus, but he also has these aggressive Boros Reckoners that are getting in and shortening the number of draw set that Art's going to be able to have.
And again, it's all about Devyn just being patient and not panicking when the Liliana went ultimate. Because, he knew. He's like, I'm going to draw 3 cards, I'm going to gain 3 life, and my opponent doesn't have a huge amount of pressure on me anyway. So I will be able to stabilize as long as I just keep making my land drops and my opponent doesn't draw anything too devastating. So Devyn did get a little fortunate with a few draws here and there, but he did everything he needed to win the game.
Yeah. And so now we'll see if he can finish it off as Art does draw a new card here. Not on land, as you do see him reaching for mana. Not sure what the card is, but we know one of those cards in his hand is a Blood Crypt. The other card is a Mystery.
We know it's not a bonfire, at least. So
yes.
That was one of the cards Devyn was probably most scared of.
You do see a Blood Crypt coming to play on tap turn. This does look like it's going to be a Rakdos Return is what his draw step was. And now the tough part, again, as we brought up with the bonfire, is how much do you do this Rakdos Return for?
Yeah, you want to play around Izzet Charm. I think you have enough mana to play around Izzet Charm. Springs of Revelation, though, will bring Devyn up to 10. So probably don't have enough to play around both cards, but you gotta pick your poison.
Yep. And decides I'm just going to go all in with this. Izzet Charm's going to take care of that. The Spell Pierce mode on that, pay 2. Something that Art cannot do. Art just does pass the turn back. Being at 8 life, blocking is going to become a little bit more difficult here. You do see just a Wolf token available. And it looks like Devyn's considering adding a Snapcaster Mage to the board here.
Yeah, I think if he casts Snapcaster and Searing Spear, but I don't think he has enough red mana for that. So he'll be able to do it this turn though.
And he draws a mountain, attacks with everybody. Wolf token. Looks like it's probably going to get in front of an Augur Bolas here. As getting in front of a Boros Record doesn't really accomplish very much. And you see Snapcaster Mage, and Art is going to concede. So Devyn Marsh may have been late to the party, but he is up a game so far here in the semifinals with a blue red flash. Again, our undefeated player in the Swiss, and our #1 seed.
Yeah, and again, Devyn. There was one turn where Devyn maybe exposed himself a little too much to a Searing Spear.
Sure.
But beyond that, I thought Devyn played that game really well. Didn't panic. Was focused. Knew what he had to do. And some people, once your Liliana gets ultimated against you, you probably just kind of get into panic mode, start playing a little too aggressively, start making more mistakes. But Devyn just was patient, played through it, and ended up winning the game.
You could definitely see a line of play there that would be reasonable, where he doesn't even worry about the Huntmaster, maybe Searing Spears Liliana to move it down to 1 counter, so he staves that off for 5 turns or what have you. But he would end up losing a card every turn. So, as you said, he played it pretty cool. Didn't worry about Liliana too much. The ultimate went off, and he just won despite it. So, pretty impressive play throughout that game.
And that's the thing. I mean, every once in a while you'll see good players. Some players will be like, oh wow, that card's really, really important. And other players will kind of realize, like, no, not really. I know what my plan is. I'm not too concerned with that. Sure. And one example of that is in the Pro Tour Finals, it was LSV versus Gabriel Nassif, and LSV played an Ajani Goldmane, and a lot of people in the chat room were like, oh god, that card's great. Nassif definitely needs to counter it. And Nassif looked at his hand, saw the Cruel Ultimatum, kind of figured out what his game plan was. He said, no, resolves, let it resolve. And he ended up winning the game regardless of the Johnny, because he knew what his game plan was going to be.
Sure.
So as long as you know what your game plan is, you can kind of figure out whether or not a card's going to impact your game plan or not, despite how powerful it might appear.
Yeah.
And I think, Devyn kind of said, it doesn't matter, I know what I'm going to do. He's probably going to ultimate on 6, and then I'll be in a good shape from there. And does that game turn out differently if Art takes it up one more turn?
Yeah, I think it's likely.
Yeah, it definitely changes everything. But either way, I think Devyn played pretty well that game.
Well, my friends, it is trivia time here. As you do know, during the semifinals, we give away 6 months of Star City Games Premium to one very smart person who can answer one of our incredibly difficult questions. And this time, Osip is going to be asking the questionnaire. To, of course, answer it, all you need to do is send us a tweet, with the hashtag of SCG Premium. We will select one of the winners, so it is not a race. It is more important to get the answers right, as it should be. And we'll select the winner from that, and we'll tell you who it is after this round of matches. So, Osip, take it away.
Okay, so in Devyn's deck, he has a pseudo combo that allows him to kill his opponent out of nowhere with a Boros Reckoner. What is the instant spell in Devyn's deck that allows him to do that?
Oh,
It's a tough one.
that's way better than my question yesterday, actually. It's actually like a realistic question. Mine was very bad. I actually felt bad.
Undercity Informer?
Yeah, it was embarrassingly easy.
What is the black human?
Yeah. In the human reanimator deck, they let you kill your opponent. Well, if you guys can't name that instant, that combos with Boris Reckner that kind of hit the scene at Pro Tour Montreal, again, send the answer to hashtag SCG Premium. We'll select one of the winners. So again, it is not a race. It is more about getting it correct. And we prefer if you don't use the internet. That's correct. Don't cheat.
Yeah, please don't use the internet.
Yeah.
Use your brains.
Yeah, we can't stop you, but we do trust you.
Yeah, honor
Not
code.
using the internet. Absolutely. So we're going to cut back here, see exactly what these guys do have in their sideboards. You do see them sideboarding and shuffling up for game 2 here momentarily. Art is going to be on the play this game, and he can side out some of those, some of those removal spells like a tragic slip and stuff like that, and hopefully sideboard into some underworld connections and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think he wants duress. Cards like Deathrite Shaman, not bad, especially against Snapcaster Mage. Rakdos Return, duress. Probably wants Slaughter Games, Underworld Connection. Bonfire of the Damned, not great against Blue-Red Flash, especially if they have Boros Reckoner.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you can just end up drawing the game.
Yeah. Killing yourself.
Yeah. Again, like you mentioned, Tragic Slip, not amazing in this matchup. So potential to board out some Bonfires, potential to board out 2 Tragic Slips, gives him 6 slots. I like Deathrite Shaman coming in because it gives him an early play, gives him a little game of doming him when Devyn's cycling cards like Think Twice and Zori's Charm and stuff. I like Duress because, again, you want to be able to take Sphinx of Revelation or possibly Supreme Verdict after board. Underworld Connection, I think it's good. I don't think it's great against Flash, though. Underworld Connection is one of those cards that I think is good in the mirror, and it's good against a deck like Esper that are a little more grindy. But Devyn's a little more tempo-based. So, because of cards like Boros Charm and Searing Spear, and again, the Harvest Fire combo, it could be a little dangerous to actually have a card like Underworld Connection in your deck because, it's going to allow you to draw your removal spells. But, I'm not sure. It's definitely a card you want against control, but I don't know how controlling you consider Blue-Red Flash. It's really more tempo-ish. Yeah. But again, that's certainly a card that Art could be bringing in. But I think definitely Deathrite Shaman definitely wants Duress and possibly Slaughter Games and Rakdos Return.
Okay.
So I think probably those 6 for the Bonfire and the Tragic Slips, and then maybe if he wants to fit in the Underworld Connections, not sure what he want to board out. I kind of like Nighthawk as an early play. So we'll see if he decides to bring the Underworld Connections or not.
As far as on Devyn's side, trying to stop the Jund Menace from winning, you guys do see a sideboard on the screen there. Geist of St. Traft is one way to go against these decks. Depending on how Art decides to sideboard, maybe he can catch his opponent off guard with Geist of St. Traft, give the beatdowns, do the tempo thing that we've seen Geist of St. Traft decks do. In years past, it's a little bit more difficult, though, of course, with Huntmaster of the Fells and Thragtusk looming. But again, it depends on how Art decides to sideboard, because a lot of these Jund decks do try to sideboard in such a manner that they try to, out-control and outdraw their opponent, and then they can kind of get stuck, casting those Underworld Connections and trying to draw cards to deal with the Geist, and then Geist can maybe get him 12 points of damage, and you can finish him off with some burn. Other than that, there aren't a ton of cards here. I think Negate is actually pretty good here because of Rakdos Return. Can also, counter Timing Dreadbore. But I don't really love Dispel. I don't love Supreme Verdict. The 3 copies like Trickery definitely are for this matchup. And 2 copies of Jace Memory Adapter are okay, but that's more for your pure control and control mirrors. And this really isn't that. So especially when your opponent does have Dreadbore in their deck as well, I'm not in love with that card here. So I don't think there are a lot of cards that Devyn can sideboard in against the Jund deck. It seems like his Game 1 deck might be a little more tailor-made to be playing against Jund than his sideboard.
Yeah, I like Geist a lot. And again, I like the Negate too, because even though Art's bringing in Duress, that really doesn't do anything against like Snapcaster Mage Negate.
Yeah.
So like you said, stop some of the big spells like Rakdos Return, which can be game breakers. But Jace Memory Depth, I think it's okay. It's certainly if I knew my opponent was bringing in multiple Slaughter Games, I might consider bringing it in because it is a consistent card drawing spell. A little wary to tap out on turn 5 because my opponent couldn't just Rakdos Return me and target the the memory depth. But again, I think I like bringing in Geist, I like bringing in Jace, and I like bringing in Negate in this matchup.
And as we do see this game progressing here, we do see a turn 2 Farseek from Art on the play. He does have an Underworld Connections in his hand. You just see a Blood Crypt there as well. Devyn does play a Hollow Fountain untapped on turn 2. A lot of things he can be representing here. Someone as simple as Negate, but you do see an Azorius Charm in his hand. And you see a Huntmaster of the Fells here from Art, and that's going to resolve, pushing him up to 22 and give him a Wolf token. But one thing you don't see, Joseph, in Devyn's hand is you don't see a third land, so the Azorius Charm is pretty important. And it finds him an Izzet Charm, and his draw step is going to find him an Augur of Bolas.
So, a couple of options here. He could choose to just Searing Spear the Huntmaster, or he could Izzet Charm to try to dig for lands. But I think he wants to just kill the Huntmaster here. Yep.
Huntmaster is taken care of. Now this is, a window here for Art, and you do see him draw a Garruk Primal Hunter. We don't know if he has a third green source. We know he has a Blood Crypt.
No, he does. He has, I think he has a Forest Woodland Cemetery.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's not here. Yeah, so he actually already has triple green available, and the window is wide open for that Garruk Primal Hunter to take over and steal this game very, very quickly.
Yeah, it'd be one thing if Devyn actually had a third land. Maybe he could threaten the Restoration Angel the next turn. But, on only 2 lands, facing down a Garruk on turn 4, it's pretty devastating.
And so we do see Garruk hit play.
And we know Devyn doesn't even have any Oblivion Rings or Detention Spheres to deal with Planeswalkers. So his only way to deal with Planeswalkers is really being the aggressor, having a Geist to deal with it or something. And, he's just too far behind. And he doesn't even draw a third land here. So pretty tough spot for Devyn right here.
Even have to use his turn to maybe use the draw 2, discard 2 form on Izzet Charm. That's a full turn. You are just going to see him discard a card and pass the turn back here. So it doesn't even elect to tap mana on his own turn. Art's going to untap and draw. Draws a Thragtusk for the turn.
Yeah, and, Art can attack with both guys, play a Thragtusk. Devyn doesn't have answer to the Thragtusk. He could just choose to draw 5 cards, which I really like because, he has 3 Rakdos returns in his deck. So even though you expose the Garruk to dying to like a Searing Spear, still fine because Devyn doesn't have that much mana, so that means that he's basically casting 1 spell this turn, which means that your Rakdos return will likely resolve. So if Devyn casts like an Izzet Charm or my Wolf, I 100% cast Thragtusk and draw 5. But here you might just make another Beast and cast Thragtusk, and then hope to draw 5 cards next turn and Rakdos return in the same turn.
And this might be a game here where Devyn knows that, I'm not going to win now.
Yeah.
Maybe he's just sitting here, taking a couple hits on the chin and trying to collect a little information on what Art may have sideboarded in. As you do see Thragtusk be cast and resolve here. Maybe get an idea of how Art kind of plays with his Garruk, if he's going to up it, if he wants to draw 5. The game is, for all intents and purposes, is probably over. But there's no real reason to concede, especially when you're playing in the top 4 of a tournament where it's untimed and, there's no real rush. So he can collect, small tidbits of information. Nothing huge, but it's better than nothing. Yeah. Conceding doesn't do anything for you here.
Yeah, and Art ends up drawing 5 here. I think it would have been a little bit more ideal if he just makes a Beast this turn and then just draws 5 next turn.
Okay.
Because realistically, Devyn can't just Searing Spear the Garruk twice. He's just going to lose to the army that's on board right here. But, I agree with you. I think Devyn's just trying to gain as much information as possible. Hopefully, Devyn doesn't give away anything by discarding a Geist here.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that. You don't want to let your opponent know what your sideboard plan is. But, looks like he's just digging through a little bit more. Don't see this game going much longer.
You see him discard 2 Augur of Bolas. He does draw a Mountain for the turn. And as good as a magic card as Boros Reckoner is, I don't think it can save him in this situation, but he is going to cast one and pass the turn back. Never know if the opponent's going to make a mistake or not. So, playing on, he's going to continue to do, as Art is going to take a draw step.
And looks like he might have another land here, so we can see maybe a Rakdos return for 5. And then 5 damage, so he could theoretically drop Devyn down to 1. He chooses to.
Rakdos return would be for 5, puts him to 6. Attacks with both the guys. Thragtusk gets blocked, so yeah, we'll put him down to 1.
And then he'll have the Beast from the Thragtusk dying and the Beast from the Garrick. So pretty good line there, I think, making your opponent discard 5 cards and dropping him to 1 with 2 beasts in play.
Might be an okay turn.
And there we
are. He said, I am not going to discard these cards to show you anything.
So there you kind of see, like, yep, Devyn wasn't expecting to win this game, but not going to show you my dice.
Yeah. Concedes that game. Definitely does not want Art to know that he does have guys of St. Traft coming in this matchup. And we will be playing a third and final game between Blue Red Flash and John, a matchup that we are going to see a lot, I think, in the next month or so.
Yeah, and this has always been my fear with Blue Red White Flash. It's like, I think it's a really great deck against most of the format. Jund is obviously the deck that you're probably scared to play against the most. And, you know, there are games where, you know, if you're on the draw and your opponent has a Farseek, you just feel so far behind. And we saw it there. And obviously Devyn missed a land drop. But even if he does make a land drop, you know, he plays a Geist after his opponent just played a Huntmaster. And then your opponent follows that up with a Thragtusk potentially. Yeah. It's like, it is very difficult to do anything about that. So, not really sure. You know, Devyn, you know, he's going to be able to be on the play this turn. And, you know, he has a negate and is it charm to stop a turn 2 Farseek, potentially, from Art, and then follow it up with the Geist of St. Traft. So, Devyn certainly has a lot of options, a lot more options being on the play than he does being on the draw. So I still think he's not in the worst shape, especially going into Game 3. But, again, you know, that's what Jund does. He gets this mana advantage on you and then just starts playing these powerful creatures.
Yeah, just powerful creatures, powerful spells over and over and over again until the game is over. That's its goal, and it does a pretty nice job of it in these kind of matchups. Quick check-in on our other match here between Evan Baritas and Scott Seligman. Going to Game 3. Humanimator versus Jund. Humanimator very favored in that matchup, but they will be going to a third game. Makes me believe that maybe Evan did steal one with maybe a Slaughter Games or something of that nature. That's normally how Jund takes one of those games down. So we'll see who was able to win that third and final game and see what our final matchup is going to be.
Yeah, and again, depending on the outcome, it's like it can really go either way. I think if the Human Animator deck wins, he's obviously pulling for the Jund deck to win.
Yeah.
But if Jund wins, you know, probably hoping for a Flash opponent as opposed to a Jund Mirror in the finals. But
yeah.
You know, again, I think the reason people love playing Jund is because you get to play Thragtusk and Huntmaster. You get to play these high quality creatures that you force your opponent to deal with, and even if they do find a way to deal with them, then you play a backbreaking spell like a Garrick Primal Hunter or a Rakdos Return, you know? So you have so many angles of attack.
So we do see both players shuffling up here for our game number 3. See if both players can keep 7 cards. Play an honest game. Looks like Devyn has plenty of lands.
Yeah, Devyn really wants... Devyn's, I think, ideal draw is turn 2 Augur, turn 3 Geist.
Yeah.
Because there's very few cards that Art has that can deal with that board. He obviously has the Liliana. Not sure if he keeps in Bonfire, especially if he boarded in Connections. Kind of interesting to see, you know. There's not many cards he can board. We know he kept in Garrick. Definitely keeping in Liliana. Maybe boards out the Nighthawk, but I'm not sure. I kind of like Nighthawk in this game. Maybe not on the draw, but still, it's got to be better than Connections on the draw.
Sure. Especially with how this Blue-Red Flash deck can start attacking your life total very quickly.
Yeah.
Connections can be a little bit slow there. Yeah,
definitely. And again, it is a way to block and kill Geist potentially. You know, they're not always going to have the Azorius Charm or Searing Spirit, but if you don't hit that Farseek, you really need a turn 3 play against Blue-Red Flash, because if you don't have a turn 3 play, you're in bad shape.
So we do see Art taking a mulligan, going down to 6 here. See if he can put the brakes on just at 6.
Might just mulligan straight to a Farseek.
Yeah.
If I don't see a Farseek, I'm not bothering. So, you know, Art, still can draw Arbor Elf. I mean, turn 1 Arbor Elf, turn 2 Liliana is huge too.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a very real thing that can happen. That's why, you know, the Reed Duke and Owen Turnwall did have Arbor Elf in their deck. It does lead to some explosive draws, some different ones than what Farseek can do.
And I really like that innovation too. Like, if you think about it,
it's subtle.
It's a subtle thing, but it looks out of place sometimes. You're like, what 2 Arbor Elf, 3 Arbor Elf, what's that? But it makes a lot of sense if you just think about the way that they're playing it and what they're trying to do.
We do see a Blood Crypt there from Art to start the game. Devyn leads off with Hallowed Fountain into Clifftop Retreat and passes back. And we are going to see, Osip, I believe,
like
your favorite play in the format.
The good old standby.
Yeah. The old Farseek, and it looks like in Artan you see another Farseek and Arbor Elf and just lands. So, he needs some action. Lands are not going to be an issue here, but action cards certainly are.
And Devyn's hand's not bad. He's got a Azorius Charm. He's going to cast the Think Twice this turn, it looks like, and he also has a Geist too, which is again what we said is it's one of the more important cards in this matchup, especially on the play for Devyn. So. If Art doesn't draw a Thractus or a Huntmaster or a Liliana next turn, he's taking 6, and Devyn's going to be able to have untap and cast another Think Twice, or draw some gas potentially to deal with any blockers.
So there's your Think Twice that finds Devyn an Augur of Bolus. And we'll see what his draw step is going to be for the turn. That's going to reveal Thought Scour.
And Devyn might be considering playing the Augur here to try to play around Liliana, but it's much worse if Art ends up having the Huntmaster here. So I would expect him to run out the Geist, but it's certainly something to think about. Because you could just go Augur, maybe Thought Scour myself to fuel the Harvest Pyre in my hand. But I think Geist is probably ideal.
And he's going to use all his mana this turn and cast Geist's Draft, and pass the turn back, basically daring Art to have an answer to this. On this one, only a 6. Art draws a card. Art draws Olivia Valderin.
So, very good draw there. We know that Devyn does, in fact, have an answer to it, but still, he needed some threat. He needed something to get into play right now, other than an Arbor Elf.
Yep.
So, probably cast Olivia. Only thing now here is, does Devyn Azorius Charm it and then Thought Scour it away, or does he try to Harvest Pyre it?
Well, we're actually going to end up seeing a Farseek here. So it looks like we might see Farseek and an Arbor Elf, which is a little bit surprising there by not casting the Olivia there. I think, I'm not comfortable just taking 6 on the chin here from a Geist's Draft and not having anything on the board. It gives my opponent just a turn to set things up further.
Yeah, like the only issue I have with this kind of play is that, maybe he's thinking, okay, well, I want to get to 6 mana so that I can potentially pump my Olivia so it's at a Searing Spear range. But, what are you going to pump it with? There's no other creatures in play. And you're basically, once the blue, red, white opponent is able to attack with the Geist and have all his mana untapped, the number of angles that he has to play around there are huge. So, kind of not sure how much I like that play, but Art obviously has a plan, and looks like Devyn's just going to swing for 6. Looks like Art's going to take it, and Devyn can just play a land here. He can cast double Augur if he chooses, or he can just try to leave a mana up. I like double Augur here, though.
He can cast double Augur. He can do something as simple as just playing a Hallowed Fountain into play, taps and flashing back Think Twice. He's got a ton of options what he can do here, but it looks like he's going to start with an Augur of Bolas.
Yeah, depending on what he hits, he might choose to just sit back. Now he might try to just play the Hallowed Fountain and pass the turn, maybe fearing a Reckless Return or something.
Hallowed Fountain's going to come into play untapped.
Yep.
And he is just going to pass the turn.
So he's got some protection against Liliana. He's got a Harvest Pyre to deal with some creatures. He's got the Thought Scour that he can cast at the end of the turn.
And you do see Liliana is the draw step for Art this turn. So Augur of Bolas coming into play very, very timely.
Yeah, so looks like Art does have another land, so he has the potential to cast Olivia and Liliana in the same turn.
Mm-hmm. But again, this was kind of the fear with by not casting Olivia last turn. Devyn got to do what he wanted to do on this turn, basically, for free. And he just gets to do whatever he wants, gets to set himself up even further, get some information with those Augur of Bolas, represent different kind of cards by having Hallowed Fountain and Clifftop Retreat available. It's just, it's a difficult situation to be in if you're Art, just thinking about all the different things you have to play around, or maybe you're just overthinking yourself and playing around something that's not even there.
Yeah, the thing is, if you drop the Olivia last turn, Devyn could potentially just Azorius Charm and then Thought Scour it away.
Sure.
After you block the Geist. which leaves you open to the top deck of Liliana.
Sure.
You know, obviously he cast Farseek and shuffle things around, so you don't know what his draw step would have been. But I think I like casting Liliana there, Olivia there, just because you force Devyn to deal with it right away.
Yeah, it just seems like accelerating twice in a row. When especially when you have the ability to play, 4-drop on turn 3, it just doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah.
Now you do see Geist Saint Trap coming across here.
And now Devyn's in a great shape because even if Art is able to find a way to deal with Geist, he's got Harvest Pyre and Boros Reckoner in his hand, so he's basically got inevitability.
Sure, setting up the combo.
Yeah. And Art is going to be low enough from the Geist hits that he doesn't need a huge number of cards in his graveyard to kill him.
And so now what you see here is Art trying to get in front of an Augur Bolus and pick it off. And he's going to shoot the Augur Bolus here, basically putting all of his shields down. And obviously what he's trying to do here is he's trying to kill Augur Bolus to set up Liliana. But of course we know that, Devyn does have Boros Reckoner in his hand. He does have another Augur Bolus in his hand, and he can cast an Azorius Charm very simply here.
Yeah, the thing is, Art's going to be taking 6, dropping to 8. So I really, because you have an Izzet Charm in your hand too, you could literally just put the Olivia on top of his deck, cast Thought Scour, draw a card, hopefully it's a land so you can cast Izzet Charm, and even if Art somehow kills all your creatures, you should be able to get 8 cards in your graveyard to finish Art off next turn.
You can play a little bit more liberally.
Yeah.
Just, do some things that you wouldn't normally do just because you do have that inevitability in your hand. And you do see a Thought Scour here, taking care of Olivia, putting a Dragon Skull in the graveyard.
He ended up milling himself, even though he said target Art.
Yep.
So, slight mistake there on Devyn's part. I think that's just revealing extra cards, so he might have to shuffle his library.
Definitely.
Which, again, isn't the worst thing, because I think he'd rather have a land here than a Snapcaster, to be honest. But we'll see what the judge says. Yeah, if he draws a land here, I like being able to maybe cast an Augur here, or just cycling as a charm depending on what Art does. The worst thing that Art could do for Devyn would be casting a Rakdos Return before. But if he does that, that basically means that the Geist is still gonna.
Yeah, the Geist is still just giving beatdowns. Yeah. So I don't think he minds that one bit.
So like Thrag Tusk and Rakdos Return are basically the 2 worst case scenarios for Devyn right here.
Yeah.
If you can dodge those 2 cards, I think he's in pretty good shape. Even if Art does have them, though, he's still threatening with Geist.
And you do see that Devyn does just have to shuffle his deck. Art will shuffle or cut it back, and now Devyn will just draw a card here. He draws a Sulfurfall.
So perfect draw.
Yep.
Gives him plenty of plays. Probably going to pass. So yeah, that's great because he has Izzet Charm to stop the Rakdos Return. So now the only card, so that he can make sure that he has the Harvest Fire Reckoner combo. So now the only card he's really afraid of is the Rakdos.
Yeah. And you see Art's draw step this turn is an Underworld Connections. And again, as you brought up, Underworld Connections can be good in this matchup, but there are times where it looks very poor because these is what red flash decks. They're not pure control decks. They are tempo decks that do attack your life total. And right now, with Art at 8 and having to tap 3 mana on his turn to basically draw a card, it's just not ideal right now.
No. And, he could choose to cast Liliana and maybe uptick it to force Devyn to discard a card and then try to block Geist with the Arbor Elf and then pump it with Catch a Wolf Run. But it looks like he's just going to try to get a Liliana out there. So he's
actually going to try Underworld Connections. Yeah, I don't, personally, it's just, for me, with the pressure that he's under, it's hard to believe that this is going to work out the way that he wants it to.
No, and it's actually a pretty great sequence for Devyn because, drops 2 more life off, so 2 less cards that he needs to feel the Harvest Fire.
Yeah, so Art goes down to 7.
If he decides to do it again.
Yeah.
I still like casting Liliana here because it's unlikely you're going to be able to have a way to deal with the. Oh, it looks like he tapped incorrectly. Oh no, he needed to tap double black.
Yeah. Yeah. Now he's realizing that he doesn't have an Overgrown to among those lands, so he can't actually.
He has one in his hand, but he played the Wolf Run already. So theoretically, he could have cast every spell this turn if he played the Overgrown Tomb tapped and then used the Arbor Elf to untap it.
Yep.
So he could save 2 life and still play both his spells. But Devyn's just gonna say, "All right, I'm gonna kill you the old-fashioned way."
Devyn goes back to Art's end step. I think he's considering just casting. Let's see. It looks like we had a little bit of a game back up here, but it looks like he's just considering casting just Is It Charm to take care of the Arbor Elf and just trying to kill Art, which I think is reasonable.
I also like just drawing 2, discarding 2 to fuel your Harvest Fire. It's not the worst thing, because if you do that, you can attack with both your creatures. Art basically is probably going to chump block the Geist and drop the 2, and then you play the Reckoner.
Sure.
And then you just
combo
pass.
them up. Yeah.
And then you just wait for him to react, and then you Harvest Fire in response.
Okay. Yeah. So Devyn has basically done a nice job of setting up like the ultimate inevitability shield.
Yeah.
Borderline impossible for him to lose.
Yeah, and even I think if he draws 2, discards 2, it'll basically set that up pretty nicely. I don't think he has enough cards in his graveyard to guarantee victory just yet, but he'll do 5 damage. No, I guess he can pull it off without casting it if he chooses to. But again, he could just Is It Charm to Arbor Elf, and then that'll be enough. If he is with the Angel token, that's exactly 7.
Yeah. Let's see. It looks like we're waiting for a judge's ruling on something here. We're clarifying the game state, but as we do find out, we will certainly let you guys know exactly what's going on. Okay. Yeah. So we're experiencing just a little bit of technical difficulty here with our spotter, between the communication between our directors and our spotters. So we're getting that cleared up for you guys here. But if you are just joining us, we are here in sunny Las Vegas. Cedric Phillips, Osip Lebedovich. You guys can join the conversation with us on Twitter at SCG Live or hashtag SCGVEGAS. Osip and I checking the tweets, as well as Glenn Jones in the sideboard. We do thank you guys for joining us quite early this morning.
Quite early, but East Coast time, not too bad.
Yeah, you got yourself a day job. Waking up for you is easy.
I know, yeah.
You put me to shame.
You take your time.
I like the snooze button.
We have to be here in like 20 minutes, and you're like, snooze.
Hey.
Might as well.
The snooze button is whoever thought that's the worst idea. Whoever thought
that is the worst idea. It's basically just saying, feel free to be a little lazy.
Yeah, there's no good that comes from the snooze button, I don't think.
No good whatsoever. So, just waiting on Devyn, but it looks like, Devyn basically is in a really good shape right here. He's just going to cast Is It Charm on the Arbor Elf, and then a swing for exactly 7. Yeah. Art doesn't have an answer, and even if he did, he would, likely tap out, and then Devyn's free to just cast the Boros Reckoner and not worry about an Abrupt Decay or a murder or something like that.
I'm sure Devyn's thinking right now, I'd like to just show you the cards in my hand and kill you.
Yeah.
Because there's no coming back here.
You are not winning this game.
Yeah.
I have a Hexproof Creature and a combo in my hand. So.
Yeah. I'm sure he would love to just unveil the goods and show Art that it's all but over, and I'll be moving on to the finals, but he will have to wait patiently to do such a thing.
And it looks like Devyn's more frustrated than Art.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that Devyn's going to make it to the finals, I think. So here we go.
Yeah, we give him the green light. He's going to cast the spell so fast. He's like, Is It Charm?
Arbor Elf, attack you for 7.
He's going to tap the Underworld Connections.
Okay.
And he's going to draw a card. Looks probably going to draw a card right now.
Yeah, might as well. I mean, you know what's coming. You're going to get attacked for 7 and you're at 7. So.
Yeah. Trying to figure out what he can draw into.
Yeah, he doesn't really have many instant speed spells that can help him. He can draw an Abrupt Decay to kill the token, which you buy him a turn. But beyond that, not much.
He goes on a 6. Draws a blood cards.
Might get a concession.
And that's it. So Devyn March wins 2-1. Blood Red Flash off the back of Geist Sustained Traft over at Macurda and his Jund deck. So Devyn March, Blood Red Flash, our number 1 team in the tournament, has not lost yet. It doesn't look like he's planning on it.
Yeah, I mean, again, he played, I think, pretty well. Gave himself the best chance to win. And again, turn 3 Geist is just huge.
Yeah.
Which I love the fact that he has. I'm not sure if he has 4 or 3 Geist.
3 Geist on the sideboard.
I kind of start thinking, why don't people just play 4 Geist? It's like, it's so important in the matchups where you want it. So interesting to see if people start just jamming full Geist in their sideboards from now on.
Yeah, I mean, the games where this deck looks really good is where it plays more of like a tempo burn deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the games where the deck really looks good when it's being done with Geist. It gets